Thanksgiving 2013, I was going through a very dark time. I didn't want to see my family for Thanksgiving, not because I was having any issues with them, but because I didn't want them to see me. I was going through such internal turmoil that I didn't want to put a damper on anyone's time. I decided it would be best if I went to the mountains and spent time alone. I asked a friend of mine if I could borrow his sleeper van so I could stay at a local camping area. He said sure and asked if I would like to take one of his mushroom chocolates to do a medicine journey while I was there. My friend knew what profound experiences I have when I do journeys. He guided me through my first medicine journey earlier that year, which was the first time I had ever tried psychedelics. That experience opened my eyes and my mind to a different relationship with reality. His suggestion to do a medicine journey seemed like a good way to help me break through the turmoil I was experiencing, so I agreed. I thanked him for the chocolate and the van and prepared for my trip. My family was supportive of my decision to be alone for the holiday and wished me well on my quest. Thanksgiving morning, I drove up to the camping area to find a campsite. When I got there was not a soul around, which was perfect. I parked the van, took the covers and pillows from inside, and began to hike up the mountainside in search of the perfect set and setting. At the top of the mountain, there was a spectacular field of 15-foot tall rock formations jutting from the ground. I zigzagged through the maze of boulders and found the perfect sitting area inside with a beautiful open view of the mountainside. I laid down the covers and pillows and settled into the space until I was comfortable. I took out the mushroom chocolate, held it in my left hand, cupped it with my right hand, and spoke my intention for the journey. I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure it had something to do with getting past the personal turmoil I was experiencing at the time. I then slowly and deliberately ate the chocolate. While waiting for the medicine to take hold, I soaked in the scenery around me. As time went on, I started to feel the medicine working. There are a few things that happen every time I take psilocybin. After the nausea wears off, I start to see changes in my environment. Every surface I look at begins to move in a very specific vibratory way. The movement appears on anything with a texture: rock surfaces, tree bark, bush branches, wallpaper patterns, towel surfaces, rug plumes, everything. The surfaces look as if they are alive. I've often struggled to describe what I see until I saw this video. When I first saw the video, I yelled, "That's it! That's what I see!" The way the sculptures in the video move when they hit peak speed and the speed just before peak speed is exactly what I see each textured surface do when I'm on a medicine journey. When I'm outdoors, it's more pronounced because there are more textures in nature. The second thing that happens every time I do a medicine journey is I hear a very specific frequency sound. It's like a hum of a quiet machine that seems to emanate from everything, but the sound is not mechanic at all. Again, it's hard to explain. Maybe I'll come across a video that has that exact sound someday and it will help me elucidate what I hear. Once I began to see the surfaces move and hear the frequency sound hum, I knew the medicine had taken hold. One of the first phenomena I remember seeing was a boulder 20 feet in front of me morph into a different shape. The top half of the boulder took on the shape of a beautiful Native American chief with a large headdress, and the bottom half took on the shape of a large bear. I stared at it for a long while because it was so majestic and regal looking. Then I started to notice something peculiar about the pine trees behind the boulder. Every single needle on the trees was vibrating in rhythm at a very high frequency. I was mesmerized by them. I had never seen anything like that before. They were perfectly synced. As I was staring at them, I began to feel something strange. I felt a vibration inside my body that matched the exact vibration that I was seeing in the pine needles. It was as if every cell in my body was vibrating at the same rate as the needles, and I could feel all of them vibrating together. I didn't understand what I was experiencing. I didn't know what was causing the vibration. That's when the first teaching came. Teachings are another thing that happen when I do medicine journeys. When I have a gap in my understanding about something, I receive what I call a teaching. That's when, okay, this is where it's going to get really hard for me to explain. It's as if someone is giving me information, but there's no being there. It's not a person, it's not a god, it's not a deity. The information seems to come from nature itself, if you will. But nature isn't speaking to me. The information emerges in me not as words, but as an understanding. The understanding gets translated into words by my perception, and it comes across as a thought. But the thought is clearly not my own. I hope you can understand what I mean despite my poor description. This part of my experience is usually not easily effable. The teaching that came through about the vibrating sensation was that I was seeing and experiencing the frequency of the earth. At the time, I didn't know what was meant by the earth's frequency. I thought it had something to do with the 528 hertz musical tuning that I see bantered around on different blogs. It wasn't until I did some research when I got home, which I often have to do to gain clarity on some teachings, that I realized the teaching was referring to the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is defined as a set of extremely low frequency spectrum peaks in the Earth's electromagnetic field that begin at 7.83 hertz. According to NASA.gov, these frequencies are 100,000 times lower than the lowest frequency radio waves used to send signals to your AM/FM radio. I'm not sure how it's possible to detect a frequency that is on the ELF spectrum, but who knows what the mind is capable of when it's in a heightened state. Maybe this also explains the frequency sound I hear. As I was sitting there mesmerized by the pine needles, the sun started setting and I began to get cold. It was November after all. I pulled a cover over my shoulders and wrapped my arms around my knees so I could stay warm. To get more comfortable, I laid my head down on my arms. As I lay my head to the side, my gaze fell towards the area below my left arm. The cover that was draped over my arm created a dark shadow underneath. At first, it just looked like a regular shadow, but as I kept my gaze on it, it stretched into an endless hallway. There were 20-foot archways lining either side of the hallway, and I could sense there was more to see inside. As I was looking down the long extended hallway, I was thinking how fascinating it was that I could see something of such depth in the shadow underneath my arm. I wanted to continue exploring the phenomenon, but the sun had set and I knew it would be dark soon. I thought to myself, I better get this body to the van. This was my indication that the medicine had fully kicked in. When I'm deep in a journey, my relationship to my body becomes dualistic. I begin to see my body as separate from me. It's not an out-of-body experience. I'm still in my body, but I lose all identity with it. I lose all concern for the body to the point that it can be detrimental. I started to think, what would happen if a dangerous animal came up to me right now? The answer was I would have no fear, and I would let the animal do whatever it wanted, even if that included eating my arm. Even though most of me had no concern for my body, a part of me knew I should. A sense of stewardship to my body remained, so I decided to move my body to the van for safety. Right then, a different thought came through. This thought was not like a teaching. It seemed to have a persona. The thought mockingly said, "Why would you create a dangerous animal to come and hurt this body of yours? You should stay and continue." I understood what the thought meant. It meant you are creating this reality. Why would you create something that would hurt you? I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that everything I was experiencing was my creation. I wanted to stay and see if I could prove the theory that we are living in a virtual reality of our own creation. I find the idea fascinating, but I didn't think it was wise to test the theory with my physical safety. I thought, no. I have to play it safe. It would be irresponsible of me to let something happen to this body. I slowly got up and collected all the covers and pillows and started to make my way through the maze of boulders. Right as I walked out of the boulder field, a huge gust of wind blew. My hair blew over my face and dust clouds kicked up. As the wind settled, I looked up and saw the most amazing thing. A massive geometrical grid. I could not believe my eyes. I was blown away. My mouth gaped open and my arms fell to my side, dropping everything I was holding to the ground. I stood there in awe. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I could see the geometrical grid connecting everything in nature. Every animal, every stone, every tree, every blade of grass was connected through this grid. In that instant, I had an understanding that the grid is how everything communicates. It never dawned on me before, but that's how animals know when a disaster is coming before it hits. I stood there for the longest time, or at least it felt like a long time. During medicine journeys, I had no concept of time. I sat staring at the intricacy of the geometrical grid. I looked at the rabbits, the birds, the trees, the rocks, and all the connections between them. I took in what I was seeing very conscientiously. I considered it a gift. I felt honored that I was given the sight to see something so foundational in nature and so fundamental to existence. My understanding was that I was seeing source energy. Ever since that fateful day, I've been able to see the grid every time I do a medicine journey. I see it on all things and connecting all people. I had a very powerful experience with source energy during a medicine journey several years later in 2016. But I will save that for another article. I will also save the rest of this journey for another article since this one is getting rather long. I received an unforgettable lesson and teaching when I got back to the van. That part of the story deserves to be told. I will share what happened in part 2.